Look, one of my power bank is an idiot. It's at 0%, but it's charging my tablet. Oh, and then there it dies. Yep, it's dead. Hey, oh, hey, at least it's not my power bank. This is mine, and it's much better. What's up, guys? Welcome to another video. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at my entire Wolfgang phone collection. I only have two of them, but that's because they're really rare. I'll get into how first I'm gonna get into how this company evolved, how this company was pretty darn successful in the Netherlands, and it was only a Netherlands company. It was only in Dutch, and their phones were only sold in Dutch in the Netherlands. So that's why these phones are rare. Um, I'll get into the thing that this particular model has. I'll get into this one, and so on. So first up, I'm not gonna do too much about the AS45 IPS here, since I did a comparison with the Star B79M in my previous video. If you haven't seen that, please go ahead and watch that. I can't put an iCard sadly, since YouTube removed them for some reason. Yep, YouTube is an idiot. The design on this is pretty weird, but this model has a pretty cool original design that is not Chinese, unlike this one. Let me get my tablet. First up, what is Wolfgang? Wolfgang, otherwise known as AT or Ambience Technology, is a Dutch company that was, I think, a startup. I think they made a startup in 2011. They did make Android Gingerbread phones. Well, they did make a phone that had Android Gingerbread, which I'm not sure which model it is, and I'm not even sure if that's their first Android phone ever. But they've been making Android phones for quite a big time. And they made their phones under the Wolfgang brand. So the actual brand is AT. Thus the battery says AT on it, or Ambience Technology. It was quite a basic company, and the phones that they sold were only sold at Aldi, which is a really big store. You probably know that store. If you don't, well, then you're probably American or something. Um, the AS45 LTE, which I have right here, is one of their last phones ever, if not their last phone ever. Um, some research says that this is probably the last phone that they've ever made, but it is the only Wolfgang phone in existence that has 4G LTE, which is cool. I'll get into the condition of these later, and they're not in that condition that they are because of the how I've abused them or something like that. It's just the quality of the phones themselves. So let me search up some stuff. Yes, I'm reading some stuff here. So AT Mobile, it is called, better known as Wolfgang actually, because that's the brand that is sold under. Since April of 2012, they've been selling phones. I'm reading here under the name Wolfgang, just like I said. Um, Only on supermarkets like Aldi. Funny thing is, the phone that I'm recording on right now, I know the video quality is not good, but that's my own fault. I did put it to HD. I forgot to put it to full HD. The phone I'm recording on right now, you could buy at Aldi as well, which is really impressive that you can buy such a good phone at a freaking supermarket. I will get into the bankruptcy with this brand and what all happened. So I'm not completely sure how this brand died. They made pretty decent phones. They had a lot of choice. You had a lot of choice, to be really honest, for a phone brand that was sold at the thrift store, well, at the supermarket. Some phones are slightly Chinese, like this one, but some phones are completely original design, like this one. For example, fun fact about the ATAS 45 IPS: the design of this phone is actually from a Chinese phone called the Amoy. Is that how you pronounce it? Something something, but their phone had also a red back cover and stuff like that. This phone did come with different colored back covers in the box, but I did not get the box and everything like that. So this phone does have a Chinese design. It's not made by Wolfgang. The design is from a Chinese phone, but the motherboard and everything is not Chinese, because the Amoy, or whatever you want to call it, is has a much more different skin than this phone has. Same specs, no idea. I have no idea about that Amoy phone, But when I read that you could actually flash twerp on this thing, it said dash amoy something, because it's basically the same phone with a different motherboard. Or just a different ROM. I'm not even completely sure. Yeah, they make quite a lot of phones, as you can see right here. For example, the A55 HD1, which is one of the most high end phones they ever made. The highest end is, I think, a HD2. And yes, it does have an HD screen, that phone, and it's 5.5 inches. That's why it says 55. Here's the 45 LTE, and that's why I think it's one of the last phones it's the last phone they ever made, because it's the last one on the list here. They also made much cheaper phones like the AS40D2, or the AS40W. As you can see, the HD and the HD1. One of the first phones they made is the ATAS45Q2, and so on. I don't see the AS45 IPS here, but they have still 10 results going. As you can see, these are the phones that they made, just to give you guys a little bit of idea. That's the AS50 SE, which was also one of a pretty popular model. The 55 HD, which is probably one of my favorites. The AS40 SE, I also know. The ATS40 SD, which is one of the most cheap phones they made, I think. ATS45 IPS, that's my model. There are even more results here, and they made so many phones, you can see. Not just smartphones, but also that. Some dumb phones, and they've existed for a long time. But as you can see, these really, really old models were all under the AT brand. So it's not from Wolfgang. These phones are made from AT, which is which is the brand under the Wolfgang, you know. And the first Wolfgang phone they ever made is the ATAS 43D. As you can see, and not gingerbread if you look closely. So yeah, that's pretty cool actually, to see one of those sites still listing them. I mean, they're Dutch phones, so why not should one of those devices exist? They did make really good phones. Like for example, the ATS 55 HD1 had a 30 megapixel camera, and I think a 5 megapixel front facing camera. It had a HD screen, and I think they also made a model with a full HD. Yes, they made a full HD screen version of that phone, I think, but it wasn't listed there, and it was a really not successful model, sadly, since it was a really, really, really good phone, and I would love to get them. Sadly, the highest end version that I have right here is the AS45 LTE, but I still really love that I can hold this, and that it's actually mine, since these phones are really rare. So they went bankruptcy in 2017. I'm not completely sure why, but I think that was because of the bad service, since lots of people complained about the service, that they didn't replace screens properly, or had a really bad waiting time, or just didn't respond at all. I've had some reviews about that. I took a look at that before doing this video, before doing this documentary. Um, so that might be one of the reasons. Not completely sure. I have had a very interesting comment on the surface, that from some guy that actually said that he drove to the surface and saw two guys smoking outside, and that it was a really bad service, that they couldn't repair their phone. So yeah, as you can see, it was already abandoned before they went bankruptcy. So I think that they were just they just stopped making phones, or they just could have gone bankruptcy just for some reason. But the brand behind these phones is completely dead, and that just makes these really, really cool, in my opinion. That I'm holding a phone from a brand that's completely dead, but it's also from my country, which is really, really cool. So that is the story behind Wolfgang. It was AT that made it. They have made some different phones. If you look closely on my tablet, you could actually see that I made a Motorola Rocker ripoff and some HTC ripoffs. Well, ripoffs, really, really close to that design. And it was quite a good brand, you know. Unlike my Motorola, which is sold at Aldi, which is a good, well-known English brand, which is a real good, strong brand. Uh, this was just a weak Dutch manufacturer that only sold in the Netherlands, nowhere else, and competition was really low, because no other phone was sold in Aldi except for that Medion P4013, which I have sitting right there. But that phone was sold back in 2013, and I don't think that phone sold better than this. Plus, that phone was from a German brand, and these phones are not German at all. So that's all about Wolfgang. Started in 2012, died in 2017. Their last model is probably the AS45 LTE. Their most high-end model they ever made was the AS55 HD FHD, I think it's called. Not completely sure, but there was a version with a full HD screen, 30 megapixel camera that was basically on par with the Nokia 6 and stuff like that. Way before the Nokia 6 existed. So they made some really wow factor phones. They make some really good phones. So it was not a bad company at all. Their lowest end model phone was probably the 45 Q1 or whatever that really tiny phone was that I just showed you on the tablet. The one with the little nunchuck, or the nunchuck, the trackpad, you know. But I'm not sure. I haven't checked the specs, but you can literally just see them. Um, First up, the 45 IPS that I have right here. Both of these phones are from the same thrift store. Now we've gotten the brand out of the way. Now I'm gonna get into these phones. So the one that I got first was this. So they had a huge phone lot at the thrift store, which is super unusual. It's ridiculously unusual in general that they have that they have mobile phones. And if they have mobile phones, they're most of the time Nokia's that I already have, or Nokia's that are ridiculously similar to Nokia's that I already have. So that those are not worth buying at all. At least in my opinion. I think David99 with the disagrees, but I don't like them. So I had a Xperia X10 right there because I really want a Sony Ericsson Xperia phone. But that phone was ridiculously laggy. It had battery issues. It didn't charge properly. It got really hot at the back. It did turn on. It was fully updated, sadly, to Android 1.6, but it was so laggy that I'm actually not regretting that I bought this. Design-wise, it looks a bit like a Sony, but I'll get to that later. Um, this one did turn on. It did have some charging port issues, but it did turn on. It booted up so slow that I couldn't really check for the touchscreen working because, as you can see, the screen is really, really good looking. So it's quite impossible to see, but as you can see, let's turn on the flash. It is indeed cracked. Yeah, there you go. It's cracked right here, with a lot of hairlines, and a long crack going right here. The LCD is fine though. So yeah, the touchscreen doesn't work properly. This side of the touchscreen does work, but the rest does not. But I can control this thing via, if I can actually find that thing. Well, I can't find it right now, but using a USB, micro USB to USB A adapter and a computer mouse, I was able to get this thing to work. So you can still properly use this phone. You just have to hook up a computer mouse or a USB hub, so you can actually use this as a little pocket computer, I guess. So yeah, that's pretty cool that it actually supports OTG, because that was not a feature that was commonly used back then for cheaper phones. So the 45 IPS does perfectly work. And if you don't know, yes, it does have an IPS display, which looks really, really good. It's a 4.5-inch display. As you can see, it has the AT branding on it. It's all of these have the original battery, which is pretty bad, which I'll get into later. It has 2050 milliamp hour battery. Dual SIM, I think. Yes, it is dual SIM. AMUS technology, as I said. It does say made in China, but that's normal, since I already told you that the design, that this phone was designed by, I think, Amoy, which is that Chinese manufacturer that basically made the same phone, but with their Chinese crappy motherboard and stuff like that. And I don't think that this is the same motherboard, and even if it is, it does have a different ROM on it. Is it even possible to put the same motherboard with a different ROM? Anyways, I'll just turn this on. um, a little bit, some cosmetic issues like this long crack, but it does perfectly work, this phone. And there's nothing wrong with it. This was one of their cheaper phones. This was one of the more expensive ones, but they both retailed for $200 if I'm not mistaken. It does have a startup sound, but I actually forgot to turn it on here. But it's a really horrendous startup sound, and I don't want you guys to suffer already. And you guys are already suffering because my camera is dirty. So yeah, it takes a really long time to boot. This one has the power button on this side. I'm just gonna turn it on. Oh, you know what? Let's take off the back cover first. So yeah, this was one of the latest models they ever made. It's a 2000 milliamp hour battery this time. As you can see, same stuff, nice big lettering. Batteries don't fit each other, sadly. That's kind of stupid. But I may be able to put a hacked battery in here in order to preserve the battery life. Look at that speaker. Is that like a dual driver? Let's turn this on since it takes a ridiculously long time to boot. There we go. It does have a really good boot animation in my opinion. If you're wondering, this phone runs KitKat. This phone just looks really good. I'm not kidding. It's a real good thing in my collection, even though it doesn't work properly. It's really wide, was really tall. Not really wide, it's really tall. And I absolutely love these matrix-like buttons, or whatever you want to call it. Oh, there's my 45 IPS, which has a horrendous battery, so I'm gonna get a power bank. And while that is going, I'll let you guys take a look at that ridiculously long boot up. Here's my power bank. Where is my charging cable? Jesus Christ, I have so much stuff laying around right now. Oh, there it is. Got it. There we go. Don't worry, the other phone is completely charged. One of the main issues were battery life on these, but looking in the comments of the service, I haven't noticed anyone that said that they want to replace their battery. So I'm not completely sure. At first I thought it was just a 45 LTE that just had a bad battery because of its age, but this phone also has that. So look out when you're buying a Wolfgang phone, they will have bad battery life. Not sure if it's the battery's fault. I have tried to look up a battery for this phone, and even on AliExpress, it's practically impossible to get a new battery for this phone because the brand is gone. They were just not popular enough. I'm not completely sure how many of these are sold. I think the 80 and the 45 IPS that I have right here, not a lot of units were probably sold on this. Probably like 2,000 or something, but I'm not sure at all. These might be ridiculously rare phones that I'm holding. But I think the 45 LTE is a little bit more special than this phone, since this phone has a stupid charging port. Let me just clean that. The charging port was full of blue soft stuff. So yeah, that's cleaned out now. Like I already cleaned it out when I got this phone from the thrift store, since it didn't charge properly. So I don't know why it's still having this issue. I think the charging port is just screwed up. But yeah, this phone does perfectly work, and its IPS screen is not fake. It looks really good. It definitely looks better than that Star B79M phone. And in that video, I said to you guys that I didn't notice a difference, but that's actually not true. When I took a better look at it, I definitely could see a difference in terms of color, definitely. It does look really good in my opinion. Plus, it's a little bit bigger than that Star phone. So yeah. I've already told the specs of this phone. It's just an MT6577 with 1 gig of RAM, and that's cool because 1 gig of RAM runs really well. So yeah, even if you guys haven't seen the previous video, I'll still go to device info HW. As you can see, it's still shown as AT, so it's not generic. So I think they actually have a proper motherboard in here. So you can see you can read all that stuff by yourself. 540p display, proper resolution right there. 60 Hz. Memory, RAM 1 gig, internal storage. I have no idea why it says that there's nothing. 8 megapixel back, 3.1 megapixel front. But the front selfie camera is really disappointing. Not only does it have a piece of dirt in it, but it also just doesn't really look good at all. Thermals, it does have proper thermals. You can look at them. The phone does get pretty warm at this spot right here. But that's pretty normal for the earlier type of MediaTek phones. They just didn't really have that good cooling. But MediaTek has really learned of that, because their phones right now don't run that warm anymore. And the battery life has gotten amazing on MediaTek phones, much better than Qualcomm. So that's really cool. Unfortunately, it wasn't really the same when this phone came out, but I will definitely not say that Qualcomm was any better than this, since their phones were either laggy or were just really bad at battery life as well. Some phones did have good battery life from Qualcomm, but they were just really slow most of the time, because it was quite logical that they had good battery life, those phones, because they're just super underpowered. So you can see, here's the 8045 LTE. Unfortunately, I can't unlock it, as you can see. I am pushing on the screen. I can do this though, which is pretty cool, but I can't swipe right here. The screen is just broken there and it doesn't work. So, but proof of concept, it does work. Yeah, it even vibrates. There we go. I unlocked the phone. That's pretty cool. And I can plug this into my computer. Man, the screen looks so good on this. I can plug this thing into my computer and use Visor so that I can actually control this thing with my computer. But the stupid thing is I can't use it with any games. So battery life on this is probably a little bit better than on that, since it's Android KitKat, with a slide skin on top of it, just like any other Wolfgang phone. I think I'm not completely sure when they put it in their little skin. Definitely not a Chinese skin. I'm trying to find my USB OTG adapter, but I just can't find it anywhere. I do have one. They're really hard to get, but I do have one laying around somewhere, but I just don't know where. I can't seem to get it here. No, I don't seem to get it. But you just have to take my word. You all know what Android 4.4.4 looks like. Screen wise, it looks really good. I think it looks a little bit better, but I'm not completely sure what resolution. But I can't check since CPU-C does not want to work. I should have put CPU-C on this spot so that I could actually use it. Oh man, this phone is so cool. Yeah, you can go to settings. I think I might be able to press the settings. Yeah, there we go. That's pretty cool. I can still use this slightly over phone. Android 4.4. Can we do the Easter egg? This thing does have a Qualcomm processor, but this phone is much more powerful than the Wolfgang that I have right here. This thing has a MediaTek chip, which is much older than the Qualcomm in here. This is a proper Snapdragon 410 inside of here, and that's really cool. Although I already have a phone with a Snapdragon 410, it's not working properly either, and it has a broken LCD, which is even worse than this. So yeah, you can see KitKat looks much better in real life. That's pretty obvious. Screen looks pretty good, I gotta say. It doesn't look the best, but I think it's on par, if not slightly better than the 45 IPS. I do want you to know that you have to turn up the brightness pretty freaking high. I mean, look, the touchscreen perfectly works there. Oh, well, sort of. Let's turn up the volume. Is the speaker broken? Let's play a sound actually. Oh, frick. I think the speaker is actually broken on this. Ooh. Oh, that's not good. No, that's not good. It does not have a startup sound. You can turn off and turn on the startup sounds on the IPS, which I'm gonna do right now. This one perfectly works. Every part of the touchscreen does. As you can see, it does charge. I have had charging issues on this before. As you can see, it's a little bit more personalizable with that little Wolfgang logo in the corner. This theme, I did personalize this phone. As you can see, same theme. It looks really, really cool in my opinion. Just basic. Not too overwhelming like the stupid thing is. By the way, the home button light has started to work again. Yesterday when I tried recording that Star B79M versus this phone video, it was completely dead, like ridiculously. As you can see, Android 4.1.1. You know what? Let's set that Wolfgang wallpaper, the custom one. Yeah, it's a screen effect right there. It's not properly translated. Falling F Wolfgang LWP, which stands for live wallpaper. Let's set that. That's cool. Does this phone have that too? Oh, crap. Ah, this button doesn't work. It's completely dead. Like, this phone is so poor. It works completely fine right here. I might be able to fix this. I've seen a guy that managed to fix this. I do have lots of apps on here since I just wanted to test them. The battery life is good on this so far. It really has good battery life so far. Wow, just listen to that. It seems to go absolutely crazy when I press the back button. Yeah, the screen is screwed up, you know. I can still turn it off, thankfully. It's not that horrible. I've had phones that had much worse issues. So yeah, it takes like 10 minutes to turn off or something. Oh man. Both of these phones are just poor and they just don't really last that long, which is the main problem of these. Much less games on here because most of them are put to the SD card and the SD card has been removed, so it's kind of screwed up. I do use this phone quite a lot more than the LTE, which is quite obvious since I can just use this phone daily if I want to, since the screen is completely fine, which is, man, I really love this phone. It wasn't cracked at first, but now it is, but that doesn't matter. Although this phone is a little bit less valuable, I still think it's a really cool one. Don't worry, the vibration motor does work, and the speaker actually does too. So yeah, those are the two phones, I guess. Let's just call it a day for this video. That's the story of these two phones. I didn't do proper specs on these, but that doesn't really matter in my opinion. I will probably do a comparison between these two phones, but it will be much less comprehensive than the previous video, which I really recommend you watching since it was a lot of work. I can, however, put this against the Medion, but the Medion is much cheaper, so that will be kind of a unfair thing. Let's check the startup sound of this. I will turn on the startup sound for y'all. I don't know why it has EU volume thing. I don't know. Yeah, the battery life is much better on this phone because it's a little bit newer and it has a much more different. It has a much different chipset, obviously. But yeah, this phone is just custom, and I would really love to repair the touchscreen, but it can't seem to get a new screen. I will do some more research on the internet, but yeah, audio profiles. Oh, that's not good. Damn it, I can't seem to find the freaking sounds. Do I just have to press on it? Yeah, I just have to press on it. Standard touch sounds, power on, off ring sounds. Wow, great. Ringtone. Oh, I can do custom ringtone. Oh no, it's just like that's like those crappy Chinese phones have. Not that this phone is crappy in any freaking way. I mean, it's a cool thing. Yes, I know. So let's turn this off. Yes, that's why I didn't want you guys to suffer from that noise. And it instantly turns off. So, with that, the AS45 IPS, perfectly working device. It just has one crack in it, but it perfectly works. The 45 LTE, broken screen, but it does perfectly work, and I can get it to work with OTG, with the power of USB, you know? So yeah, cool phone as well. Hope you enjoyed this video, which is most important, and see y'all later.